Hello, my yarny friends. I'm Sara SAch, and welcome back to my crochet channel. Now, today's video is step number 2 in our Pioneer Woman 5-spice throw blanket crochet along. That's a mouthful. Now, it's our called PW or Pioneer Woman because all the yarns that we are using are the Pioneer Woman acrylic yarn in a light number 3. Yesterday we did step number 1 and we used the acrylic coral striping yarn for the first section. We did a starting row of foundation double crochets and then 5 rows of our granny stitch. Now, the way the pattern works is we have 5 different stitches using 5 different colorways, and we're going to do those 5, yes, 5, and then we'll repeat those 5 several more times in order to make the length of the blanket. Now you can find all the information, multiples, measurements, and all of that stuff on the blog, okay? And I'll put that blog link down in the notes underneath this video, as well as I have created a playlist here on YouTube, and I'll put that link also down underneath this video, and then you can go to that playlist and find all the steps, because there's going to be actually 6 steps. We have 1 step for each of the 5 stitch patterns, and then we also have a 6th step, which is the trim, how we trim off our blanket. All right? Just to kind of keep you in the know of what we're doing. It's a lot of fun. All right? I think you're really going to enjoy it. It's going to be a lot of fun. I've enjoyed it. I enjoyed making the whole blanket. Okay, so step 1, we used the Coral Stripes acrylic yarn. Today we're going to be doing step 2, and we're going to use the solid coral. All right. Oh, also, the complete supply list is also on that blog link that I told you about, that the link will be down below as well. And it will answer all your questions that maybe I forget to answer today. All righty, let's get started. So on step 1, we used the Coral Stripes. And today, for step 2, we're just using the solid coral. Again, they're all light number 3 weight yarns. All right, so this is the swatch that I've been working on. Those are the first 5 rows of our blanket. And remember, you have 110 foundation double crochets. And even though we change the stitches around, you're going to have a total of 110 on every row. For instance, we did this granny stitch row where we have double crochets and chains, but the total of those double crochets and chains equal 110 on every row. I'm just working from a swatch to make it easier for you to see all the stitches. So we completed our first 6 rows, our foundation, and then 5 rows of our stitch pattern. And at the end, we did not chain 3 because we're going to change colors. All right, so I've got my coral all ready to go here. We're going to bring in our new color, and it's very important that you remember to make your chain 3 after your color changes. 1, 2, and 3. And that's because that chain 3 counts as your first stitch on your next row. Something that I do, a lot of times I will carry my yarn up the sides, but because this is 6 row repeats, and I don't want to carry this up because I'm not going to use it until I do those repeats. And so I'm going to cut my yarn. And what I do is I do what I call a stay knot. I just take the 2 ends and put them together, and that helps them stay. And then when we come back through, we'll weave all those ends in. And unfortunately, when you do color changes like this, you are going to have to do a few weave ins. All right, so I've got my chain 3. I'm going to turn my work, and we're going to do a solid row of double crochets. Again, my chain 3 counts as my first double crochet, and so I'll double crochet in the next. Then I'll place 2 double crochets in the chain 2 space. 1 and 2. Then we'll stitch 1 double crochet in the next 2 double crochets. And then 2 double crochets in the chain 2 space. 1 and 2. And so we'll do this working all the way across our blanket, and this will give us a nice row of double crochet to work with. And then we're going to be doing this every time we change colors and do a new stitch pattern. We'll do a solid row of double crochet. It gives it a nice finish to the previous pattern and a nice start to the next one. All right, so a solid row of double crochet for row 7. I have completed row 7. We have a solid row of double crochets. We stitched a double crochet in each double crochet and 2 double crochets in each of the chain 1 spaces across, ending with 2 double crochets. And our chain 3 counts as our first at the beginning of the row. And that's going to be on every row of our blanket. Now, remember, I am working off of a swatch. I'm not doing the whole blanket that I've already made. Okay, so you're going to need to have 110 double crochets. That's the amount of stitches you'll need to have on every row. We're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and turn our work. Our chain 3 counts as our first double crochet, so we're going to double crochet in the next stitch. Now we're going to do a row of what we call cross stitches. All right, so we're going to skip the next double crochet and double crochet in the next. Now we're going to cross back and go from the back to the front and stitch a double crochet. And that makes a cross, and it's a really nice texture. All right, so here's the one we just stitched in before we made our cross. We're going to skip the next one and double crochet in the next. Then we'll double crochet, crossing back from back to front. There we go. And this is what we're going to do all the way across until we reach those last 2 stitches. So we'll skip the next, double crochet in the next, cross back and double crochet in that skipped stitch. And the best way to keep your stitch count correct is just to watch where you placed that last stitch, because you stitched and then we crossed back, and you don't want to go back in that stitch where we stitched before the cross, okay? And so here's where we stitched. Here's the skip one we're going to skip, and then stitch in the next, and then cross back and stitch in the one we skipped. All right, and then we'll do this all the way across until we reach those last 2 double crochets. I have cross stitched all the way across, and your stitch count again is going to be the same. We're still doing double crochets, we're just crossing them, so our stitch count is going to be the same. When we reach those last 2 stitches, we're just going to place a double crochet in the last 2. There we go. And chain 3. Now we're going to turn our work, and we're going to repeat what we just did. It can be a little bit difficult to do cross stitches in cross stitches, but once you see how easy it actually is, you'll really like it. All right, so here's our chain 3 that counts as our double crochet. We'll double crochet in that next stitch. And now we're going to start doing cross stitches again. Now, if you look at the top, you can see all the stitches look just like they do when you do a regular row of double crochets. You have all that looks like braids going across. All right, and that's what you need to look at when placing your stitches, okay? So we're going to skip this first stitch, go to the next, and then cross back and stitch in the one that you skipped. It's the same thing. It's just a little more complicated when you're stitching cross stitches into cross stitches. But you'll see it makes a really lovely texture. All right, so we're going to skip this one, stitch a double crochet in the next, and then cross back and stitch a double crochet in that skipped stitch. It really does make a really nice texture. Skip the next, double crochet in the next, and cross back and stitch a double crochet in the skipped stitch. Isn't that pretty? It's just a super cool stitch. All right, so you're going to continue to stitch your cross stitches across, and then you're going to stitch one double crochet in those last two stitches. I have completed row 9. Again, I'm working with a swatch, and your stitch count is still going to remain the same because we started with 2 double crochets, and we actually are just stitching double crochets across. We're just crossing them so you have the same amount of double crochets. And isn't that just a beautiful texture for that stitch pattern? And then at the end, we double crocheted in the last 2 stitches and chain 3. So now what you're going to do is you're just going to repeat row 9, which is the one we just stitched, for 3 more rows. So we have a total of 5 rows of our cross stitch rows. Chain 3, turn, chain 3 counts as our first double crochet in the next, and then begin your cross stitch stitches. And you're going to repeat row 9 for 3 more rows. I think you're really going to enjoy this particular stitch pattern. It's easy and it's beautiful. I have completed those additional rows here on my swatch, and you can see how beautiful that texture is. And it's just as beautiful on the back as it is on the front. All right, so we stitched a solid row of double crochets and then 5 rows of our cross stitches. That's what step number 2 is. Now remember, I'm working off a swatch. Yours is going to be a lot bigger. So let me let you see it on the actual blanket. So this is how step 2 looks on the actual blanket. It looks really nice with the granny stitch section. Step 1, step 2. All right. So have some fun with this stitch. I really enjoyed it, and I'm hoping that all the stitches that I chose for this blanket, that you're really going to enjoy them. Like I said, they're not your typical V-stitches and shells. It's some different ways of using stitches that we already know and make some new fun texture stitches. All right, so tomorrow we'll do step number 3 on our blanket. See you then.